Well, welcome back into Studio 10. Just to let you know that we are going to talk about something that's a little bit more serious, but kind of with that lighthearted twist, because there's always something positive to come out of it. But we wanted to start off by saying that, you know, eating disorders is very impactful and it impacts so many Americans. In fact, the National Institute of Health says that 30 million people struggle with them and most suffer in silence. But a Lansing native is working hard to change that by not being silent.
Yeah, it's really an incredible story. So imagine this. You're at what you believe to be the lowest point in your life, and you're documenting these tough moments in your diary. Now imagine reading that diary and experiences out loud for the world to hear. And that's exactly what Amy did, turning her eating disorder struggles to the world, and she does it all to help others. Take a look. Amy, if you were to get into an Uber and they were to ask you, what do you do for a living? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that I have a day job in software, but in my free time, I host a podcast called the Eating Disorder Diaries, which chronicles my journey with an eating disorder and my life in recovery now in an effort to help others with eating disorders and mental health because it's felt so taboo for so long, and I want to really break that barrier. So this podcast is about my personal experience with an eating disorder and my life in recovery. A lot of the episodes so far have just been about tools that have helped me recover.
So let's start from the beginning. How did your podcast, The Eating Disorder Diaries, come to be what it is today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I came up with the idea for this podcast through journaling, hence the name The Eating Disorder Diaries. In my eating disorder recovery, something that I do every single day is journal. So I'm consistently writing to myself. I've made a really good connection with myself, and I would even consider it a friendship with myself. There was always something buzzing in the back of my head once I entered a place of recovery that others need to know what I've learned. I've been in the spot where someone's struggling and feels like you're never going to be able to break free of whether it's an eating disorder or anxiety or whatever mental health issues you're dealing with. And I've just learned so much from journaling and meditating and going to therapy. I really just came up with the idea while journaling, and once I wrote that first intro, it snowballed from there, and about a month later I put out the trailer, and about 3 months later I put out the first 3 episodes.
I have to imagine that this was a very vulnerable process. So how did it feel to share this part of your life with the public, not knowing how it would go?
It was vulnerable for sure, but I was ready to do it because I had battled this for so long and really allowed myself to forgive myself throughout my life for I felt a lot of shame, and I think that's a common thing with someone who's suffering from an eating disorder is that you feel shame and you can't really pinpoint why. And I got free of that shame. And so while it was vulnerable, I was ready to do it. And the support has just been so overwhelming, but it's become so much easier. And just with the support I've gotten from everyone, I mean, I've had people reach out from India, Japan, Canada, California, all over the States. So it's been really great.
Amy, you've been doing this podcast for 8 months now, and you've already had so much success, but where do you hope to see this podcast go in the future?
I would love for the podcast just to continue to grow to a point where I can have more folks on to tell their stories about their own recovery. I think that, like we said, it's so important to give people hope because of our lived experiences. So I would love to, roll it out to other people to give them a platform to tell their stories as well. Fortunately, I think that a lot of folks now realize that getting help is a beautiful thing and it's only going to help us evolve and get better. I think that I've been able to connect with so many people and have so many great guests on that I would just love to have more experts in the field on and hopefully get the opportunity to do that.
Very, very inspiring. And Amy's podcast, The Eating Disorder Diaries, can be found wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also find more of her work on our social media pages at The Eating Disorder Diaries.
Yes, and of course, Amy wants to hear from you to keep the conversation going. She always appreciates feedback, and she's just a lovely person to talk to. I would highly recommend checking out her podcast.
Yes, definitely. Very, very conversational. We love that.